the general election right around the corner, Washington voters have important decisions to make, from who will serve as the next governor to who will represent them in Congress. Thanks for joining us. I'm Joyce Taylor. 4 state initiatives are also on the ballot, all of them with high stakes. So let's jump right into this special edition of King 5 News, giving you the information you need to vote. First up, the governor's race. On November 5th, voters will decide who will serve as the 24th governor of Washington state. On the ballot, current Democratic State Attorney General Bob Ferguson and Republican Dave Reichert, who served as the former King County Sheriff and a U.S. representative. The candidate with the most votes in the general election will replace 3-term Governor Jay Inslee, who is not seeking re-election. Both candidates see public safety, homelessness, and reproductive rights as top issues, but differ when it comes to how to address them. During our King 5 debate in September, Ferguson said that he would address public safety by helping jurisdictions hire more police and create a hate crimes unit within the state patrol. Reichert also would prioritize hiring and said the issue isn't about money, it's about trust in law enforcement.
My plan includes putting into my first budget as governor $100 million to hire additional law enforcement officers all across the state. Part of my plan includes hiring more folks with the state patrol, but specifically to create a hate crimes unit to make sure we're addressing those crimes as well.
But I find it interesting that all of a sudden Mr. Ferguson recognizes that there is a crime problem when he's been the Attorney General for 12 years.
When it comes to the homelessness crisis, Reichert said it has become worse under Ferguson's watch as Attorney General. He pointed to mental health and drugs as contributing factors, partially blaming the legalization of some drugs. Ferguson defended his time in office, arguing that he has challenged large corporations fueling the opioid epidemic. He cited the recovery of $1 billion to be used for treatment and first responders.
The homeless crisis is really a drug and substance abuse crisis. It's also a mental illness crisis. And I would pay for this, to pay for helping the homeless through the $1 billion that we somehow misplaced during the COVID monies.
A point of agreement. We agree that the issue of homelessness is complex. Mental health, chemical dependency, and affordability all play a key role in addressing this crisis. We, in my office as Attorney General, have taken on some of the most powerful corporations in the world who have fueled the opioid epidemic by not playing by the rules.
Health care, more specifically reproductive rights, has been one of the most contentious topics during this campaign, with Ferguson's campaign highlighting Reichert's history of supporting bills in Congress that would have limited abortions after 20 weeks. Reichert's campaign argues abortions are regulated in a similar manner here in Washington. State law says the state cannot deny or interfere with an abortion prior to viability. Viability is often determined by a physician, but is widely accepted to be about 23 weeks.
When I'm governor, I will support and protect the abortion laws that currently exist in Washington state. This is a question that's been asked and answered since 1970. That's when the first law was implemented.
Of course, we'll be making sure we make investments as a state to make sure that all women, whether coming from out of state or within state, are able to access the full range of reproductive freedom, which again is a critical difference in this case.
While people across the state will be deciding on who serves as the next governor, voters in all 10 of Washington's districts will be choosing who represents them in the U.S. House of Representatives. That includes District 6, which encompasses Kitsap County and the Olympic Peninsula. It will be a historic election no matter the outcome. The 2 candidates on the ballot are Democratic State Senator Emily Randall and Republican State Senator Drew McEwen. If McEwen's elected, he would be the first Republican to hold the seat since Thor Tollefson, who served from 1947 to 1965.
Today, the 35th district, which I represent, is completely Republican. The 19th district is completely Republican. The 26th district, 2 out of 3 Republicans. It has trended our way.
If Randall is elected, she would become the state's first openly LGBTQ congressional member.
I know it matters a lot to a lot of my neighbors to see themselves in their elected officials. I mean, especially young students who have always found their way to my campaign, who felt inspired.
In Southwest Washington, voters will weigh in on a rematch for who serves District 3 in Congress. In 2022, Democrat Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez flipped a seat held by Republican Congresswoman Jamie Herrera Butler, who was defeated in the primary. Gluesenkamp-Perez secured more votes than Republican Joe Kent in the general election, a far-right candidate who endorsed former President Donald Trump.
People are also just really tired of how weird politics has gotten. They are really tired of the extremism and just this chatter that never reflects the things that are hitting us. It feels like we're just in the background sometimes, and that's wrong.
Gluesenkamp-Perez and Kent once again squaring off to represent District 3, which encompasses 7 counties. Following the primary election, Kent said that he is up against a tough opponent, while also questioning her voting record.
There's a huge difference between rhetoric and records. So Marie Perez will say bipartisan, she will say moderate, and then she will vote with the Democrats every single time. She votes with them on all of the procedural votes. She has voted for all of the major issues that are destroying the country.
Another closely watched race in eastern Washington has Republican Michael Baumgartner and Democrat Carmela Conroy vying to replace Kathy McMorris Rodgers to represent District 5 in Congress. A month prior to the general election, the two candidates debated over several issues, including inflation, student loans, and reproductive rights. The topic of abortion drew starkly different opinions.
I definitely believe that the Congress of the United States should restore, with national legislation, the right of women to make choices about their own bodies.
When I read the Constitution, it clearly says that things that are not prescribed in the Constitution belong to the states. I frankly just don't think that abortion was thought of by the founders. I don't think it's in the Constitution. I think it's a state issue.
On border security, Conroy said that she would like to see an update to the country's requirements to, quote, get in as quickly and as effectively as possible, including the people that we want to have because we need to contribute to the economy, end quote. And during a forum held a month later, Baumgartner was asked what he considered the most challenging issue facing the country, in which he replied, quote, I think the highest priority in this country has to be securing the southern border, end quote. Whoever's elected to represent the 5th District will replace a representative with years of experience. Kathy McMorris Rodgers began serving in January of 2005. Our sister station in Spokane sat down with her after she made the announcement not to run and discussed what's in store for the person who replaces her.
What do you think moving forward will be the biggest challenges for the next person that holds this seat?
Oh, I think that I think it's just going to be the challenges of making sure that they listen to the people and learn these issues and take them back and serve in the House of Representatives. I do remember when I was first sworn in.
Thank you, Eastern Washington. It is my honor to represent all of you.
And I looked over, across the House, and you're looking at 435 people, and just the reality of, okay, this is a lot of people to get to know. So you're building relationships, and that takes time. So that's one of the biggest challenges. And then this is one of the largest districts in America. So traveling this district and getting to know people, but relationships are going to be most important for whoever serves in this position, both here in Eastern Washington and in D.C.
And in central Washington, Republican Dan Newhouse is at risk of losing a congressional seat to Trump-backed political newcomer Jared Sessler, also a Republican. Newhouse, who represents District 4, was one of 10 House Republicans who voted to impeach former President Trump following the January 6th Capitol riot. Newhouse began serving in 2015. He fell 10 points behind Sessler in the primary election. A candidate who sued the state and federal government over COVID restrictions will appear on the ballot in November. Still ahead, he tells us why he is now running for a statewide office. Welcome back to this King 5 Voters Guide. Let's get to the U.S. Senate race now. Republican challenger Raul Garcia is in an uphill battle against incumbent Maria Cantwell. Cantwell's a Democrat and the 12th longest tenured U.S. Senator. She's seeking her 5th term. King 5 political analyst and former Washington Governor Gary Locke said it's looking good for Cantwell.
But again, anything can happen, and so she can't relax. she can feel pretty confident.
King 5 political analyst and former state attorney general Rob McKenna said Garcia's main hurdle is persuading voters that he is a credible alternative.
He's a very appealing guy. I've known him for several years, and he's got a great story as a doctor in Eastern Washington, an ER doc.
With current AG Bob Ferguson in the race for governor, Democrat Nick Brown and Republican Pete Serrano are eyeing the office of state attorney general. Serrano is the mayor of Pasco. He gained widespread attention when he sued the state and eventually the federal government over pandemic-era restrictions. King 5's Drew Mickelson sat down with him to discuss what inspired him to get into statewide politics.
Good evening and welcome to this Pasco City Council regular meeting.
When you're on City Council,
has the crime rate dropped?
You hear lots of concerns. But Pasco Mayor Pete Serrano says one was life-changing for him. It came from the owner of a pizza parlor and salad bar.
The owner of Shakey's called me early in the pandemic and said, hey, Liquor Cannabis Board is threatening my liquor license because I'm not forcing patrons to wear a mask. I said, yeah, I laughed at him, and I knew this guy, and I was like, come on, Dean, you got to be joking me.
You can't lock everybody down.
That complaint evolved into a series of lawsuits filed by Serrano against the state and federal governments over COVID vaccine and mask mandates and the closure of schools during the pandemic. Serrano argued the government overreached its authority. He founded the Silent Majority Foundation, an organization that's gone on to challenge the constitutionality of the state's ban on the sale of guns defined as assault weapons and magazines that hold more than 10 rounds. Serrano represented Gators Guns in that case. While judges dismissed most of those lawsuits, a Cowlitz County judge ruled the magazine limit law violated the state's constitution. The state Supreme Court is expected to issue a final ruling on that Serrano battle later this year.
I think our system's broken. Absolutely. It's unquestionably broken, and I don't foresee my opponent fixing it. And so I think we need someone who's really looking out for the interests of people of Washington.
Serrano wants to be Washington's next attorney general, heading up an office with 1,800 employees and a 2-year budget well over $500 million. Mayor Serrano is proud to have helped reduce the homeless population in Pasco, one of the country's fastest growing cities.
Working with the legislature to make sure that distributors of fentanyl are actually hammered.
He'd support laws to make selling fentanyl a felony while doing more to help those battling addiction. Serrano, a husband and father of 3, says he has helped make Pasco safer and a more desirable place to live. Trends he says he'd help spread statewide.
It all started with the pizza and salad bar.
I know, it's amazing what pizza, salad, and video games can do to a father.
Brown is a former U.S. attorney for Western Washington and general counsel to Governor Jay Inslee. Brown has touted his work to keep Washington families safe and highlighted his efforts pushing back on Trump's travel ban.
Really, the Attorney General is the people's lawyer, and to make sure that people in the state of Washington are free from discrimination, have safe communities, and that we challenge laws that we don't like, that we see coming from Washington, D.C., or anything else that's a threat to the values and the laws of Washington state.
Several local levies on the ballot could also have a big impact. In Seattle, voters will decide whether to renew a property tax levy for transportation. It would raise $1.55 billion over 8 years. The money would fund infrastructure, transit, sidewalks, and paving, among other things. In Snohomish County, a sales tax for public safety is on the ballot. Proposition 1 would add a new tax of 2 cents for every $10. The funds could be used for police and criminal justice, as well as behavioral health and emergency services. Everett voters will decide on 2 initiatives that would increase the minimum wage in the city. Both would raise the minimum wage to $20.24. One would allow employers to count tips toward wages. It would also require businesses offer part-time workers more hours before hiring new employees. And Tacoma residents will vote on a property tax increase to fund the fire department. If passed, the tax rate would increase 65 cents per $1,000 of assessed home value. It would then increase up to 6% per year until 2030. Tacoma voters will also decide whether to pass 6 charter amendments. Ballots are officially in hands of voters right now. Counties in Washington state had to mail ballots by October 18th, which is when Washington's 18-day voting period begins. Once you have filled out your ballot, you can either return it to a county drop box or drop it in the mail. You do not need a stamp to mail your ballot. For a list of drop boxes in your county, just text the word ballot to 206-448-4545 and we'll send you a link with the information. Still ahead, voters will decide on 4 hot-button initiatives that could impact your wallet. They include a repeal of the Climate Commitment Act and the capital gains tax. We'll break down what it means if you vote yes or no. Welcome back. Let's turn now to initiatives. Voters will decide on 4 that will impact the entire state. Initiative 2117 would repeal the state's Climate Commitment Act, which requires the largest polluters pay into a fund to compensate for carbon emissions. Since 2023, revenue from the program has exceeded $2 billion to benefit environmental programs. Backers of the initiative blame the Climate Act for high gas prices and say money from the program is not being spent wisely. Brian Haywood with Let's Go Washington explains why he's asking people to vote no.
The Climate Commitment Act, the idea of it was, hey, let's do something that's good for the environment, let's reduce carbon emissions. The problem is that nothing in the way that they spend the money is actually reducing carbon emissions. In my view, it's a grift. It's a government grift, and they sold it by saying, hey, this is going to be good for the environment. Jay Inslee's still out there. It's not going to cost you anything, don't worry. It won't hit your gas prices. But every one of those things has been false. Number one, gas prices shot up as they were expected to. As the program is designed to do, necessarily prices go up. And if the 2117 doesn't pass this year, for some reason, prices go up even more next year and the next year, because that's how the program is designed.
Opponents of I-2117 believe repealing the Climate Act would harm the state, resulting in more pollution and a cut in funding for environmental and transportation programs. Mark Prentice says the authors of the initiative weren't serious about reducing gas prices.
I think what we do know for certain is that if Initiative 2117 passes, it's going to mean fewer protections for clean air, for clean water, for fish habitat, and it's going to cut billions of dollars from our statewide transportation funding plan. So we do know all of that for certain, and the law is very clear on that. It is going to mean more pollution and more traffic because we're going to cut funding for wildfires, we're going to cut funding for air quality monitoring, we're going to cut funding for salmon habitat, we're going to cut funding for road projects, for safe routes to school, for transit for youth. And all of these things add up to a really bad deal for Washington State.
If you vote yes on I-2117, you are voting to get rid of the Climate Commitment Act. And if you vote no on the initiative, you're voting to keep the climate regulations in place. An initiative drawing opposition from education advocates and child care centers will also appear on the November ballot. That's Initiative 2109. It would repeal the state's capital gains tax, which imposes a 7% tax on the sale or exchange of stocks, bonds, and other assets above $250,000. Money from the tax benefits things like child care subsidies, bonuses for some child care centers, and school construction. The tax raised $433 million last year. A yes vote on the initiative would mean that you support replacing the tax, which would take effect 30 days after the general election. A no vote means you want to keep the capital gains tax in place. An initiative opponents say would effectively repeal WA Cares would allow workers to opt out of the tax that funds the program. The WA Cares Act helps Washington residents access funds to help pay for long-term care insurance. A yes vote means that you want workers to be allowed to opt out of the tax, potentially reducing funds to the WA Care program. A no vote means that you want workers to continue paying into the fund without the option of opting out. King 5's Cornelius Hawker takes a closer look at this issue.
2124 leaves the choice to you.
If passed, it would allow people to opt out of the Washington CARES Act. 0.58% from your paycheck is used to fund the long-term care program. Payout for the program is capped at $36,500.
If you think this thing is valuable for you,
knock yourself out.
Opponents of the tax argue Initiative 2124 would not repeal Washington Cares.
It makes it so people only participate in the program if they choose to.
But if the payroll tax is made optional, supporters of the program, groups like AARP Washington, the Alzheimer's Association, and Washington Healthcare Association believe it would effectively repeal it because the fund would not be sustainable. Sponsor of the initiative, Representative Jim Walsh, says it would force what he believes is a flawed law to change.
Would it make that problem worse? Maybe. Or you could look at it as it would force the program to reshape itself.
Benefits will become available for qualified people in July of 2026. Finally, Initiative 2066 would roll back restrictions on natural gas. It would repeal parts of a state law passed earlier this year, making it illegal for cities and counties to ban or discourage gas for heating and appliances. It would also overturn building codes that keep gas furnaces from being installed in new properties. King 5's Drew Mickelson talked to business owners who hope to stop the state's efforts to phase out the use of natural gas.
So it's coming out from under the floor here, and then it fills up this holding tank.
Well 80 Brewhouse and its beer made from artesian well water is a shrine of sorts to the old Olympia Brewery, where the water was a key ingredient. But here, natural gas also plays a big role.
Does everything from heating up the water that I need to boiling the beer when I'm brewing batches of beer.
Without their gas-fueled boiler, they wouldn't have any beer.
Every year, when the wind blows really hard, we lose power.
Down the street at Olympia Fireplace,
there seems to be a lot of pushback. You know, a lot of people are really not happy about this whole situation.
They're collecting signatures for Initiative 2066, which would scale back a recent law aimed at phasing out natural gas appliances in homes and businesses. Byron Dixon says about half of his products use natural gas, so he and about half of his customers are concerned.
We don't want to not have a choice of how we get our energy.
Puget Sound Energy is one of the largest polluters in the state because of their use of gas. Unfortunately, gas is a major greenhouse gas contributor.
State Representative Beth Dolio sponsored the law, which she says is in no way a ban on natural gas. She says the state is just in the planning process, looking for ways to reduce carbon, like requiring air pumps instead of gas furnaces in all new commercial and residential projects, codes that could be rolled back under the initiative. Even if the initiative fails or fails to make the ballot, Washingtonians will still be able to choose to use gas if they want, says Dolio.
The bill is not a ban on natural gas. Anyone in this state who is served by Puget Sound Energy, if they want gas, Puget Sound Energy is obligated to provide them with gas.
Election coverage continues on November 5th. King 5 will have special coverage on air and on our streaming app, King 5 Plus. Tune in all evening with results starting at 8 p.m. Thanks for joining us, and remember to exercise your right to vote by November 5th.